Good day, and thank you for joining me. In today's video, we are going to examine the upcoming weather pattern, and we will take a look at several opportunities for snowfall, including one that is just a few days away. This particular event appears to be a minor to moderate snow threat, but it is a threat that extends a little farther south than we typically see. We will discuss that system as well as numerous others, as we seem to be settling into a prolonged cold pattern. The main theme for today is that the forecast models have generally reduced the likelihood of the warm-up we expected around the middle of the month. We will talk more about that a little later on. For now, let us go ahead and dive right into the model guidance. We will begin by taking a look at the European model. First things first, as we look toward tomorrow afternoon, there is not a great deal happening at the present moment, which is why we are beginning with the forecast for tomorrow. By tomorrow afternoon, we are going to see conditions begin to change quite a bit. Now, let us examine the details. There we are. That is much better. So, we have this northern jet stream, which is pulling in the cold air. The southern jet stream is what is truly infusing the moisture into the overall pattern. We are going to be watching some interesting areas for potential snowfall. This particular model shows the more southern route for the storm. There is a chance, according to some other models, that this system does track a little farther north into the mid-Atlantic and the northeast. We will consider both of those possibilities today. We are going to carefully go over all of the information. Now, before we watch this all take shape, I would like to invite you to join our Discord server. We have the QR code right here on the screen, and you can find links in the description and the pinned comment down below. It is a very active and friendly community. We have already been discussing this weather system. We also have a contest for this system where you can pick the town that you believe will receive the most snowfall. And we even announced today that we are going to be running a winter-long contest. Every single time we have one of these individual storm contests, we are going to be keeping a running total of your predictions. At the end of the winter, I am not yet certain what the prizes will be, but they are going to be much larger than for our typical contests. It is really all about the friendly competition and bragging rights. You know, be sure to get your predictions in there. It is a great deal of fun. You can pick the towns, and we will be doing this all winter long. I also plan on doing a severe weather contest for the year 2026 as well, a whole year-long competition. So please, join in on the fun. It is a wonderful weather community on Discord. We now have 750 members. That is an increase of about 500 since November, so it is growing incredibly fast. I encourage you to be a part of it. I am very active in there myself, and I would be delighted to speak with all of you. For now, let us continue our discussion about this storm. As we move forward into the overnight hours on the European model, we see that mostly northern Tennessee, southern Kentucky, Virginia, southern West Virginia, and northern North Carolina will begin to see snowfall as early as 4 o'clock in the morning on Friday, December 5th. As we continue to advance the forecast, we can see the snow remains light to moderate. This is not a heavy-hitting, massive snow system, but rather a minor to moderate event for these areas that are farther south. If this were happening in the Midwest or the far Northeast, it would not be especially noteworthy. However, based on its location, it is certainly worth our attention. And we can see as we get closer to 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday, there is some snowfall, even for my own neck of the woods. Southeastern Virginia could possibly be in the mix here. Northern North Carolina and also a large portion of central Virginia are seeing some light to moderate snowfall that is likely to accumulate in those areas. And then southern West Virginia is still one of the key areas to watch. The European model is one of the models that shows a farther north track. The system does move up the coast a bit, and we begin to see snowfall for Washington, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, southern Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, even into southern New Jersey. So many of the areas that missed out on our previous snow systems might receive a little bit from this one. And again, this is only a few days from now. This is not a long-range or even a medium-range forecast at this point. And the low-pressure system does develop. I am curious, because if we could get a slight westward trend with this system, then all of a sudden you would be looking at a more moderate snow event for some of these areas. It is just positioned a little bit too far to the south and east right now. When we look at the jet stream, here is the real issue. The flow is very flat. It is not curving up the coast at all. So, it would take a significant change to pull this system any farther west or north. However, it is still possible. If that is going to happen, I would expect it to begin showing up on the models within the next 24 hours. We will see what happens by tomorrow. The good news for those of you that may not get snowfall with that particular storm is that we have another one that appears to be forming for the weekend and into the early part of next week, around Monday or Tuesday. So it will not take long for us to get into our next potential weather event. As we look at Saturday afternoon on the 6th, we can see the Cascades, the Rockies, and even up here into Western Canada are experiencing some moderate to heavy snowfall. We also have a Clipper system, with its low-pressure center located over Nebraska and Kansas. And we do have some snowfall to the north of that system as well. It is important to keep in mind that the jet stream is still descending into the eastern United States at this point. That is a very critical factor here. We do see some upper Midwest snowfall, some fairly heavy snowfall for the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. And what we see happening with this particular storm is that we have this piece of energy up here, and we also have a southern piece of energy where that southern stream is moving in. But we can tell there is a little bit of separation between that northern jet and the southern jet right here. And this is still 105 hours out on Sunday the 7th. There is certainly time for these elements to come together a little bit more, obviously. Even this particular scenario results in a snow system for some of these areas, but it has the potential to become even bigger. Of course, it could also become smaller, but I am just trying to provide you with the full range of possibilities, including the potential for a more significant event, just to give you an idea of what we are tracking as we move forward. As we keep going towards Monday, what we see is that this low-pressure area is simply too far to the south compared to where the cold air is located, which is up here. We do not really get a connection between the two. However, please stay tuned. We are going to look at the GFS model next, where we do see this one connect. So, you will get to see what that particular scenario would look like in just a moment. As we reach Monday, it is quite clear we are in a pattern with warmer air out west, and all of that Arctic air is still pouring into the east by the 8th of the month. So, this is a fairly extended period of cold air that we are dealing with. And something else is happening under the radar. I am not going to discuss it at length here, though we probably will in the Discord server and perhaps in future videos, but we are seeing a couple of things that I wanted to make you aware of. One is called the MJO, which is another teleconnection or a large-scale weather pattern. That one is becoming extremely favorable as we are moving into what is known as Phase 8, for those of you that know a lot about that. If you do not, please do not worry. It basically just means there are good opportunities for continued cold and potential snowfall. That is essentially the direction that the MJO is heading. And that is a fairly significant indicator. Another thing is, we talked earlier in November, around the middle of November, about a sudden stratospheric warming event. This type of event causes the polar vortex to essentially split up and head farther south. And that is what we are reaping the rewards of right now. There is generally a 1 to 2 week delay for that to take effect. We are now seeing the models begin to suggest that we are about to see another sudden stratospheric warming event. And if that does occur, that would set the stage for significant winter weather from late December into the middle of January. Again, we would essentially be getting a second round of this pattern. It does look like we are shaping up to see something like that, which just continues to show promising signs for the short, medium, and long range for all of you cold and snow lovers out there. I just wanted to provide you with an update on all of that. Again, we will take a much deeper dive into that subject in our Discord server. Looking at Tuesday here on the 9th, we can see another little Clipper system, a very quick moving one that moves through the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley. We still have the ridge of high pressure in the west and the trough of low pressure in the east. That system does eventually bring some snowfall to the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, mostly light but perhaps moderate in some areas. We can already see the next Clipper system shaping up. And we have talked about this before, but with Clipper systems, the main theme is that you often get a lot of them, they are quick moving, and they produce lighter snowfall amounts. But when you see 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of them back to back, the totals do begin to add up. Also, they tend to affect areas that are much colder, so they impact areas where the snow does not melt as much. This means it does sometimes stack on top of what is already there. We are seeing another one already developing by the 9th and 10th of the month. We see that one move down into the Midwest and the Great Lakes, and then it could impact the Northeast as maybe a moderate to heavy snow system. Only time will tell on that one. We then see a recycling of the cold air, with warm conditions in the west and the trough remaining in the east. This is the forecast for Friday the 12th. Now, if you watched yesterday's video, this model did not look like this for the 12th, just yesterday. It looked very cold in the west and warm in the east. But we have seen this model really back away from that idea and instead reinforce the notion that we are going to see continued cold, at least for a while longer, here in the east. The Midwest and Great Lakes are seeing another clipper system moving through for the 13th here on Saturday. We then see that move into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast with some light to moderate snowfall, for what seems like the third time in this forecast period. As we keep going, we stay cold in the east and warm in the west pretty much through the entire model run. We do see things become a little more neutral toward the very end, which is on the 18th. This is very far out in the forecast, so we should view it with some caution. But the jet stream does become a lot flatter, where we can see it is flowing mostly in a straight west to east pattern. There is a bit of a snow system for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast here. And if we are in a flat jet stream pattern for this time of year, typically, especially considering the amount of Arctic air we have over North America, it is not necessarily going to mean it is a warmer time period at all. It is mostly going to actually be colder for these northern areas. And that is why we are getting mid-Atlantic and northeast snowfall despite there being no trough of low pressure in the east. Now, the GFS model, again, is going to show a slightly different scenario, so let us watch it play out. We get snowstorm number 1, which tracks farther to the south. We see more of western North Carolina and southwestern Virginia getting snowfall initially around 4 o'clock in the morning on Friday. And then we see more of northern North Carolina and even southeastern Virginia getting moderate snowfall here by 10 o'clock in the morning. Then we see this particular system keep the snowfall in those southern areas without really tracking up the coast. So that is quite a difference. For our friends in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, Southern Pennsylvania, and Southern New Jersey, this particular scenario shows very little accumulation. It is quite remarkable, considering this system is only about 2 days away. It is a challenging forecast, with possibilities ranging from a few inches of snowfall to virtually nothing for some of these communities, and we are so very close to the event. So, please stay tuned for updates on this developing system. As I have mentioned previously, I truly feel this is an all-or-nothing scenario for many people, where it will either provide a surprising amount of snow or it will be a non-event. It is a very delicate forecast to track, so I would advise cautious optimism. This situation is still fluid and is subject to change, just because the forecast models have been so inconsistent, but it is certainly exciting to follow. Looking ahead to Sunday, the 7th, and into Monday, the 8th, you can see we have another potential snow system for similar areas. The European model had the low-pressure system in about the same spot, but did not have as much cold air in the mid-Atlantic. In this forecast, however, we get both the cold air and the storm, and this actually leads to another snow system tracking quite far to the south. We should approach the forecast for South Carolina and North Carolina by Monday afternoon on the 4th with some caution. It would have to be an incredibly cold day on Monday for the high temperatures to be low enough for snowfall in these very southern locations. Time will certainly tell, of course. I believe our very best chance for snowfall on the East Coast is if the entire storm system tracks farther northward and includes more of the mid-Atlantic. But as we know, the weather can be full of surprises these days, so we must consider it a possibility. The pattern seems to keep the cold air in the east. We have a first clipper system and then a second clipper system there. This one appears to be a more significant event for the mid-Atlantic and northeast, at least for a clipper system. Then we do see a warm-up here on this GFS model for the 13th and 14th. And then we see some colder air moving back in. It appears the southern stream will infuse with the northern jet, bringing some stronger systems. And we end up transitioning back into something of a northern plains, upper Midwest, and Great Lakes snowfall pattern. We see a very significant system here towards the end of this model's forecast for the plains, Midwest, and Great Lakes. Then, the cold is projected to return to the east for the 17th, 18th, and 19th. So again, there are some differences here. The GFS model shows a small break in the cold and does warm us up for a few days. The European model, however, suggests the cold is not going to end past the midway point of the month. It is forecast to continue without letting up. The GFS model, again, takes a bit of a break, but both are very active with snow systems. There will be multiple events to track. So, the outlook is certainly optimistic for those of us who enjoy the cold and snow across the country. For total precipitation, this southern jet, believe it or not, with all the snow we are seeing, is positioned very far to the south. We do see some activity moving across the northern portions of the United States, including some clipper systems as well. This is the general storm track that we are seeing quite often. So, some northern stream activity and a lot of southern stream activity. The outcome will depend a great deal on how much of this energy we see coming together or not, as we have discussed throughout this update. Now, looking at the precipitation anomalies, we do see above average moisture for the northwest, but below average in the southwest, below average for the south central states, and below average for a large part of the east. This is interesting because despite having what is likely above average snowfall chances, we are not really getting any significant rainstorms in between these events at all. So we are not getting those large, soaking rainfall events, nor are we getting enormous snowstorms either. You have to remember that most snowfall comes at about a 10-to-1 ratio. This means 1 inch of liquid precipitation is equal to about 10 inches of snowfall. During this 15-day period, you would probably average seeing more than 1 inch of precipitation. So if it was all coming as snowfall, you might need to get 20 inches of snowfall to meet your average precipitation. In a cold pattern like this one, that is possible, but we are just not seeing that level of snowfall at this time. I would say the snowfall chance is above average. However, the overall precipitation, the total moisture, is not meeting that average standard for many of these areas. And that creates a rather unusual situation, where we are getting a lot of snow within a below-average precipitation pattern. We do see that some of the lower elevations of the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas are showing below-average snowfall on this European model, but the northern Cascades into the Rockies look to be near average to perhaps even a little bit above average in these northern areas. For the northern plains, the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast, this is all looking very good and quite active. This is especially true for these locations farther south. In many years, these areas do not even see a threat of snowfall until we move into late December or January. Therefore, this is all something of an added bonus compared to what we are used to. I have seen that a number of people were disappointed by yesterday's snowstorm, or perhaps this upcoming one is missing them. But it is important to remember, folks, it is only December 3rd right now. You know, in many very active winters, we do not even see any snowfall yet at all, or even within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So, everyone should maintain a bit of perspective. This is all a bonus compared to what is even standard. I am certainly enjoying tracking this. This is very exciting. There is also lots of active lake effect snowfall in here as well. So, we are seeing high totals for many of these eastern areas. The GFS model is a little farther south with this snowfall. As you can see, there is a bit more separation where the Mid-Atlantic region just seems to be missed entirely. And I know that would be a disappointment for our friends in the heart of the Mid-Atlantic because last winter was very similar, over and over and over again. The deep south areas saw a great deal of snowfall and the interior northeast saw a great deal of snowfall, but your region was caught in between, missing out on both scenarios. The snow was either too far south of you, or that rain-snow line was just to your north, and there was no real in-between. I am hoping this winter is different. Now, for the temperatures. Looking again at the European model, the first Arctic blast is coming to an end. The second Arctic blast comes in with significant intensity for later this week, around the 4th, 5th, and 6th. Then a third Arctic blast moves in and is even more intense than the two before it, for the 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then we may get a 5th one here, or a 4th or 5th, then the 5th or 6th, and then perhaps another one towards the end. So, we see numerous surges from this huge trough that is bringing Arctic air with it time and time again, with very little to no breaks in between with warmer air. It does look a little milder here towards the end of the model's forecast period. It is still quite chilly, and truly, it is 360 hours away. So, you have to approach this part of the forecast with some caution anyway. The GFS model, again, we are going to see the numerous Arctic blasts here upcoming over the coming week or two. But once we reach the 12th, we see that warmer air shift in and the cold shifts toward the west. But look at the end of the model run. We do return to a pattern of warm in the west and cold in the east, and it happens relatively quickly, in under a week. So again, that warm-up starts mostly for the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. and then maybe part of the 17th. We are back into the colder air as a whole. In my opinion, both of these models are looking more optimistic than yesterday for continued cold temperatures. And again, there are things happening that go beyond even what these models are showing. Things for after the 15th and after the 20th, like the sudden stratospheric warming and the Madden-Julian oscillation. All of those things are lining up to give us some confidence in the medium to long range that we will see more cold than warmth overall in most of the central and eastern United States. And with that, we will likely see a lot of snowfall opportunities. So, the outlook is very optimistic today, folks. For all of you who enjoy cold and snow, here is the 7th through the 17th on the European ensemble model. Just to give you some bigger picture guidance, these ensemble models, which are really taking 20 to 30 members, so slightly different models from each other, are taking the mean average of all of them and giving us that result. And what we are seeing on the screen here is that the majority here do agree, the vast majority, on warmer conditions in the west and colder conditions in the east, continuing for the 7th through 17th timeframe overall. And the GFS ensemble model, which works the same way, is very, very similar for the 9th through the 19th in this instance. So, again, everything looks quite good, folks. With all of that being said, I hope you will be sure to subscribe. We upload a new forecast every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Please be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I will see you all in the next forecast.